The NHL playoff picture is still up in the air, but here in Winnipeg, fans are confident the arena will echo with the sound of white noise again.
Let's go! Go, Jets, go! Winnipeg is back in the big leagues and over the moon.
Welcome back to the landing strip after a overtime W against the Edmonton Oilers. For the first time in franchise history, the Winnipeg Jets put up back-to-back 100-point seasons. But this is going to be an interesting show. I think Gilbert Marion over on YouTube with the first comment kind of nails it here with saying, a goofy game with a lot of mistakes. But this team keeps working hard and pulled it out. Let's dive into everything we saw here, but I don't want to do this alone. Mikey, how are you doing tonight, buddy?
Doing okay. Glad to see the Winnipeg Jets get both points in this one. Not the way I would have drawn it up, not the way you would have drawn it up, not the way the coaching staff probably would have drawn it up, but you know, at the end of the season, they're not going to ask you how, they're just going to ask how many, so we added 2 points in this one, and yeah, there's a lot of weird things that we can talk about tonight, and I'm excited to do that with you in the chat.
And hey, they did gain a point on Dallas, who drops their game in overtime. St. Louis and Vancouver go to overtime after Brock Besser pulls hero with 3 seconds left, and the Blues end up winning that one. But hey, we know how this show starts after a win. Why don't we wake this thing up again?
Let's go.
I don't know, man.
It's the most tepid Squirtle.
It's that time of year where tepidness is a little on schedule for this team, potentially. But, Mikey, as always, I want to ask you first, what was your big takeaway from this hockey game tonight?
You know, as always, our chat is up and up on things, man. So I'm going to hop right to a comment by Brandon Muckman 6. The thing I took away from this is that, you know, it was a bit of a maybe shaky game from Connor Hellebuck tonight, but for once he deserved a team to step up and grab a win for him. So it's, yeah, that's kind of my takeaway, that for the, you know, very few times, maybe the first time all season, where if Connor Hellebuck has an off night, the Jets generally don't come away with 2 points in that game. This was one of the few times where, you know, they found a way to, especially in overtime, like that's a cheat code for the Jets. You've got so many individual guys who can just make something out of nothing that it's almost unfair with that 3-on-3. But yeah, it was it's good that they were able to get 2 points on a Hellebuck low night.
Yeah, definitely back-to-back shaky nights for my heart pick. All of a sudden, a little concern there. Are we going to see Comrie against Buffalo even with the extra rest?
I doubt it. No.
My big takeaway, something we've talked about, and I see you shout out the chat. I want to shout out the chat. I see Turb Ferguson says we need some special teams practice Saturday, and Ethan KPM, who's given us our show title for tonight. I appreciate the DM from Ethan. Says just the PP, and we've talked a little bit of late about the PK being a concern. I thought this was a night where it was actually really strong. You saw them making some aggressive reads, especially along that half wall where they would outnumber a guy with their back turned. The power play, though, what is it now? 1 for 16?
1 for 16
stretch?
in the last 6 games.
Not ideal. And in this one, it was a lot of like uncharacteristic passing mistakes. I mean, I felt if we were playing a drinking bingo game with Scheif on the half wall on the turnovers on the power play, we might have been doing this show a little loaded. Definitely a frustrating one in this one. And honestly, their 5-on-3 really frustrates me this year. For a team that has been so effective most of this year on the 5-on-3, I don't get why they don't go into a box plus one and really set up a shooting gallery from the top. I mean, on the 5-on-3, their only shot came from that Scheifele play down low to Kyle Connor, who gets a good look there. I thought this was a game actually kind of fitting that Kyle Connor ends this one. I thought in regulation he had the most quality looks and just wasn't beating Skinner most of this night, and then beats Picard on one that Picard might want back, the way that goes in. But I did think it was fitting that Kyle Connor buries the winner in 3-on-3, and we know that group of Morrissey, Scheifele, and Connor has been a bit of a power play or 3-on-3 cheat code. Josh Morrissey brings out the spin move, opens up the ice for everybody as a change is going underway, and Kyle Connor leaves it for, Mark Scheifele leaves it for Kyle Connor for the win. Also nice if you're a team playing against the Edmonton Oilers when they don't have the NHL cheat code in Leon Draisaitl and McDavid in that 3-on-3, that first shift, especially after that Ehlers toe drag opportunity, might not have gone the right way if they had those guys. As Gilbert Marion kind of put it, if they couldn't win with no Draisaitl and no McDavid in the third, definitely something that was going to have me pretty irritated tonight. To even see them kind of chip away and come back in that one, a bit frustrating. In that third period, I want to shout out off of that bad power play, that frustrating 5-on-3. The fourth line really gave them a hell of a push on that next shift. You saw them really getting in there grinding. Morgan Barron just misses on the wraparound, and they continue to go to work. And Tanev takes, 1, 2, 3 maybe whacks at it before it gets in. But nice to see him get on the board for the first time since coming back over. Clearly a big shift in this game, especially the way it started to go in that third period. Where do you want to go from there?
Ooh, yeah, there's a lot. First, I'd like to quickly shout out a first-time chatter, B Supreme 5, who wants to let us know it's Josh Scorsese now. So we're going to be going with that. I like that because he was fantastic on the game winner. Yeah, it was one of those games where there was so many of these little things throughout it, but in the end they were able to get it on that overtime winner. Definitely Picard's going to want that one back. He's going to watch that again and go, yeah, that's coming in cold. That's, you know what I mean? Especially for Josh Morris, or Kyle Connor, who normally he'll score regardless if it's a good shot or not. But yeah, that's one Picard's going to look at and go, yeah, I want that one back.
I see Tanner B over on YouTube wanting to shout out the fourth line looks awesome. Good to see too many high danger area turnovers, especially at the blue lines. And that was a big takeaway for me today. This game was, it felt like a lot of it was played in that neutral zone. And I know formally is a guy that we always go back and forth about how important the neutral zone is for the Winnipeg Jets. And through a lot of this game, it felt like that was a danger area for them, especially at both blue lines with some of the turnovers we were seeing, which wasn't fun, though. I thought they also held the Oilers in check pretty well despite it. This game did feel more like a defensive battle than maybe you would have thought from those two teams. Even despite the mistakes, it didn't feel like either team was overly dangerous. I mean, both those Oilers' first two goals, I think, are goals Connor Hellebuyck's really going to want to have back.
100%.
I don't know. I see Choices TK starts over his thoughts over on Twitch where what the hell is going on? 2 more bad goals. Uncharacteristic and tough to see in back-to-back games. Top line has disappeared and has been a defensive liability. And this was one of those games where the top line created some decent looks. Like I talked about Kyle Connor having some of the better looks in regulation, but they were also giving up a ton the other way, which was frustrating. He also points out 1 for 15 the last 16 games on power play. Cold again on a night where Draisaitl was out and McDavid left early and was clearly not 100%. The Jets again didn't look sharp. Despite all the cliches about one game at a time, this team has the look of a team that is not ready for that is ready for meaningful hockey and is tired of the regular season grind. Focus and attention to detail is off. And this was the last game of a road trip. They do have a couple days off here. Let's see what this looks like against an opponent we expect them to potentially control the game over against Buffalo on Sunday, because these last 2 games of the trip leaves a lot to be inspired as we get closer to that playoff mix.
Yeah, they definitely look like a team that maybe is looking ahead a little bit, that is starting to think about the playoffs, that is starting to think about having a couple days off where they can catch their breath. And this game specifically did feel like a feeling out period between two teams that are both that are going into the playoffs, that are both expecting long playoff runs, that maybe expect to see each other during those long playoff runs. Still have one more regular season meeting with the Oilers coming up. So it did feel a little bit more, they felt a little bit more like they were feeling it out on both sides. And a little more defensive than you would have expected. But Yeah, big shout out to the fourth line tonight again, who are just they're finding ways to create offense in limited amount of ice, and it's really nice to see. And I wonder how long until we see if there's going to be any changes coming up with like injuries or things like that. What happens? Because yeah, they're playing great as a unit right now.
Definitely are, and they deserve credit on this one. They are giving the Winnipeg Jets a jolt at the bottom of the lineup, come up with a big goal, which is something you want to see from them. But the style of game continues to be a positive for that group. The other forward group I did like today in this game, and I see Gilbert beat me to the punch here, with fourth line had offensive dominance and the second line strong. I did think this was another strong game from that Nick Ehlers, Vlad Nemestikov, Cole Perfetti line. Again, I talk about that thing, right, where Nick Ehlers, especially in years past, hasn't necessarily always gotten points, but he is so good at in transition when he realizes he has numbers, driving the center of the ice, and it forces a defenseman to make a play on him, right? Because he's so dangerous with his change of speed. And this time, it's the left-handed D jumps up on him, where he just slides it over to Dylan Sandberg, gets one right on net, and Cole Perfetti, Johnny on the spot, bangs in the rebound. I did think this was another good, positive step for that group tonight. What'd you see out of that group?
Yeah, it was great. Nick Ehlers should get all the credit for it because he's putting in the work. That was they're continuing to play well together as a group. It's great to see that Perfetti has really found a way to play with Ehlers. We saw at the beginning of the season that they were having a little bit of difficulty with maybe their timing, trying to get their different styles to mesh, but I think we've kind of hit a point now where they're really able to find each other on the ice, and it's working really well. And the Cole Perfetti season continues, man. I'm enjoying watching him score these goals. That one was real nice. It was real slick.
And you hinted at it. Let's talk about it before we dive into some more really interesting comments from Nick Ehlers in that first intermission when asked about the success of Cole Perfetti. What did you take away from that interview? Because I admittedly, I don't watch the intermissions too much, especially my puppy has not been happy with the lack of attention he's getting in these late night games, especially going to the gym beforehand. So I try and use that time to kind of settle him down. You sent me the video, so I'll ask you first. What did you think of that Nick Ehlers answer when asked about Cole Perfetti's emergence?
It made me pause when I first watched it. It felt a little bit weird. I went, what? There's a long pause that he makes when he's asked the question about Cole Perfetti playing well. And then he's got a weird look on his face, and then he kind of smirks and says, well, I think I should get a lot of credit for that. He goes, me and Vladdy, we should get, a lot of the credit. We're doing all the right things. And he goes on to give Perfetti, his flowers as well, and says, he's moving his feet. He's in the right areas. He's a real smart player. He does. But it made me stop and go, that was a bit of a weird answer, which is why I sent it to you. Because, it almost felt like a guy going, well, you're asking me about some other young guy who's going to try to be replacing me essentially when I walk. I'm having a good season. You don't want to know about me? I don't know. What did you feel about that one?
So Nick Ehlers is someone that has that dry humor to him, but yeah. I did kind of read into that one a little bit where we've talked about on this show. This is a guy in the last 2 decades is putting up the best points per game season with the least amount of ice time we've seen in the NHL. And it did come across to me at first. Obviously, he gets into crediting Vlad and crediting Perfetti and how well they're doing on the forecheck and getting their feet moving and really working off each other. So there was a lot of credit handed out to himself and his line mates. But I remember starting that second period, and Kevin Sawyer made a comment about Nick Ehlers wants credit. I'm going to give him some credit. So I was curious where that stemmed. And it does feel like Nick Ehlers is playing some good hockey. We talked 2 games ago how felt it was an off night for him, but he's really bounced back well from it. Yep. He was in creator mode, but it did feel a little bit to me like a guy that's a little frustrated with the lack of credit he does get. And we know this is kind of something that we've kind of thought about him potentially walking because of it. He's always kind of been seen as a secondary piece. And maybe I'm reading into it a little too much, but it did feel like that a little bit at the beginning. It was an interesting answer for a player like that.
Yeah, we absolutely could be reading too much into it, but I don't know. It just when I watched it, it just made me go, that was weird, So I wanted to get your thoughts on it too. And I don't know, chat. What did you think? If anybody saw the video, was he just having fun, or do you think maybe that's a guy going, hey, what the hell?
Giller Marion really appreciated his game. He was flying all night, best player out there tonight. And yeah, when Nick Ehlers is using his wheels, and Nick Ehlers is really using that change of space, and when Nick Ehlers is really moving out there, he's a dangerous hockey player, right? And we know that. We've seen that for years at this point. I thought this was another example of it. And also, like, it is the kind of thing, we kind of heard the broadcast talking about how that line's been playing well, and I believe they have. But there is also moments, too, where I see the need for a 2C a little bit. There's a lot of times where Ehlers creates something for Vlad, and you just know it's not going to go that way. But, yeah, it was just an interesting comment, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on it.
So when does Morgan Barron take over as second-line center?
I see you're asking that with Big Papa, and hey, I like what that fourth line's doing. I don't know if Big Morgan Barron's that guy. I think we're a little too desperate to get a little upgrade in there.
The rise is here.
I want to shout out Dante Violet. Can we talk about how Nick looking swole as fuck? And I gotta say, man,
just casually
down
mentioning
about
the game
8
earlier. No big deal.
Yeah, we're down 8 in the last couple of weeks, hoping to be down 10 this weekend. So I'm feeling that. I'm feeling myself a little bit.
Yeah, we good.
I'll take the compliments where I can get them. I like Zuch 40. Yeah, I like Zuch 40 kind of looking at both sides here with Sandberg leaving Hyman untouched in front on that third goal sums up the Jets game. Seemed like no passion to it, but also points out 100 points with 12 games to go. Let that sink in, which is otherworldly. I remember at the beginning of the year, I thought this team was going to be a 97 to 102 point team. I thought there was going to be a little step back from the 110 points, and we haven't seen that. 12 games to go, or 11 after tonight, right? And they have a chance to beat that 110-point mark. They're in a President's Trophy race. Julian points out that Washington beat them to 100 by about 90 minutes today. Overall, that's a huge season from Winnipeg, and doing it back-to-back seasons for the first time, that's something to be excited about.
Yeah, that's massive. And it's still 12 more after today. There's still 12 more after today. So, yeah. Like Big Papa says, 124-point season coming in. I think they'll beat the 110 from last year, which is kind of incredible when you look at it. They've been on pace to have their best point season by a mile there. So it's interesting to see. Yeah, I'm excited.
Beat the Jets by 2 time zones, as Zuch 40 points out. Now, coming into this game, one thing we talked about yesterday, and you nailed it. You're on the ball when it comes to Scotty Arneal and his habits and his trends. Would you think of him going back to the Lowry, Nino, Appleton setup? Would you think of that group today? We've talked about the fourth line, but let's look at that third line, which is something that's been a bit of a struggle of late.
Yeah, I figured they'd be going back to it. Not only did they go back to it, they started the game as well. Because he wants them to play through it. He wants them to work through the issues that they're having. That's the MO of this coaching staff right now. They've decided on the roles that everybody has, and in those spots, and any issues they have, they've just got to play through it and hope that they can find it. Not a great, numbers wise from that group tonight, especially at 5-on-5. They were outshot. They were outclassed on the high danger shots. It's not working all that well at the moment. Again, I don't know if it's injuries. I don't know if it's not clicking in their heads right now, because the grouping hasn't changed. You can't say they don't know how to play with each other. You can't say that, they're just not used to each other. They know what they're, and you can't say they don't know the system, right? So it's either an injury or they've got the yips. Those are the, one of the two things. So It'll be interesting to see what happens with 2 days off here. If guys take some time off to heal up, if we come back from these 2 days off and we find out that somebody's not skating, maybe somebody goes day to day on something, it'll be interesting to see. I wouldn't be surprised to find out that somebody may need an extra day off or something.
On the good side of things, they do set up a nice goal. Morgan Barron stretches it to Nino, who sees absolutely great read from Josh Morrissey as this play develops, gets moving down the center of the ice, and Nino just puts it onto this tape. Josh Morrissey buries. So you saw a little bit there. That was a nice touch from Nino. Great to see. But this was another tough night for that group that has been a concern for a long time. And I'm a bit worried like you are with that group. Now we got 12 games to go to kind of find it. But those 12 games are going to come quick.
Yeah, there's not a lot of time to work through it. So that's what I'm hoping that it's just, everybody's got to be banged up at this point in the season, right? Nobody's healthy, this far into the year. I'm hoping that right now maybe they're just a little extra beat up when you look at their play style, how much they were playing early on in the year. They may be carrying a few extra, sore joints, sore bones. So I'm hoping that maybe a couple days off and some R&R.
So I want to dive into this play, and then I see Rahul wants to call tonight. So I do want to, I wanted him to call in once we get through to the From Financial Face-Off. We'll open up those phone lines. I see T. Will's kind of seeing the same thing we are saying, find someone who believes in you the way Arneil believes in the third line right now. And I do think it is going to be a problem here unless they could find it soon. But I want to talk about a specific play here. I see DLabs25 saying, Oilers fans losing their minds over an apparent dirty play by 44. Knobloch just confirmed a lower body injury. And someone else on YouTube brought up this play as well earlier in the chat. I'm going to try and scroll and find it, but what'd you think of that play that takes Connor McDavid out of this one?
Unless Morrissey stuck his stick between McDavid's leg and yanked on his groin, I don't think it was Morrissey's fault on that play. Yeah, he whacks a little bit at him on his hands the way you see 100 times in any fucking game. It wasn't a wrist injury. Kevin Sawyer, as much as you really wanted it to be for some reason on the broadcast over and over again. It was, it's a groin injury. McDavid was carrying some of those knocks into this game already. It's a whole lot of whining about nothing. I get it. That's their guy, right? That's McJesus. I totally understand. I'd be pissed if, I thought that's what was happening, but I can also watch the play and go, well, that's clearly not what, So, yeah, if anybody's calling for Josh Morrissey on that one, they're a fucking idiot.
Oh, so you're not a big fan of David Staples, I take it, who I got to take a little run at on Twitter this evening. As a beat writer who's covering this team and knows going into the game that Connor McDavid was dealing with an injury, they didn't have Draisaitl, and it's a lower body injury, how are you going nuts about that play? It's a harmless play that he clearly tweaks something. Josh Morrissey does not have a reputation of goon squatting. And we got a beat writer saying Oilers need to send someone after Josh Morrissey for that nasty, steaky cross check. I mean, this is a guy that mistakenly took a sink as a pisser. So, I mean, we already know the eye test isn't his brightest. But you pay attention. This is a team you cover. Like, nothing crazy happened on that play. It's unfortunate they lose McDavid.
Yeah.
And they're already down Draisaitl, which I do think is a big impact in this game, obviously. Those are the two cheat codes in a game that was tightly played, in a game where a couple softies keep the Oilers in this. But, let's settle down here. I get he's their guy, but I can't say I'd be going apeshit if a tweak like that happened to Kyle Connor. It's an unfortunate play within a game.
Yeah.
Settle down, folks.
Yeah, there was a nothing play. He just happened to get hurt on it. It's, they got to calm the fuck down on that one. To say Morrissey was, going out there to hurt McDavid is ridiculous. I never want to see any player hurt. I don't cheer for injuries ever. But it's just crazy to say that was, Josh Morrissey's fault and that he did something on that.
And one more place I'm going to go before getting to the From Financial Face-Off, opening up these phone lines and turning the show over a little bit. I like to see a little joking beef over on Twitch where Donnie Fester asks here, Donnie here, how many points win the West? Love the show. And I'm guessing somewhere like 112, 110, 112, looking at the remaining games. Dallas would have to really go on a scorcher to kind of beat that number with the 10-point cushion the Winnipeg Jets have. Yeah. I do think they are they're flying pretty high as far as winning the division, which we've talked about. It's going to be important. It's maybe looking like it's going to be St. Louis, which might be a tougher out than we might be hoping for. But Big Papa gets on him a little bit. Donnie DM me saying he hates the show with the eyes. And I know Donnie. I don't know if Donnie did that. And Donnie replied with, don't lie, no one has ever DM'd you. Love the show. Love to see our audience getting into it each other once like that. Scott Westman also says, no one ever has been so drunk they thought a sink was a toilet. I can't be the only one, Nick. Hey, I don't like to share those stories on here, so we're going to leave that one alone, okay?
Will not confirm or deny.
Yeah, we're not going to touch that one here. I'm not going to put that out in the open public for you guys. Jacer83, our resident Oilers fan, who I was talking to at the gym today, and kind of like we were talking about at the end of last game where the Jets were out of that one, and it felt like they overran the Morrissey minutes and potentially overplayed Connor Hellebuyck, sending him out. I was talking to Jacer today, and you know how the Oilers just came off that 7-1 trouncing with Utah. Really odd for Knobloch, knowing that McDavid and Draisaitl are banged up, to keep playing them so heavy down the third. I know Jacer was really frustrated coming into this one, and then they only get 40 minutes out of McDavid and don't even get Draisaitl. Sometimes I think coaches really overthink the final 20 minutes, especially in a blow, because why put yourself in that position to lose both in a game like this?
Yeah, that's you don't think about it in that way though. A lot of the times, right? You're never expecting the injury. It's tough. It's tough.
But hey, let's turn this over to the From Financial Face-Off on a night where I was really struggling to find one at that. So if you have a detail in this game you think really tipped the scales one way or the other, or you felt was really missing in this game, let us know in the chat. Feel free to call in after me and Mikey dive into ours, and we want to hear from you, the audience. As a reminder, I'm going to take this moment to remind everyone, if you're a part of Sunday afternoon show after the Buffalo game, we will be giving away tickets to the Vancouver Canucks game the following Sunday. And I got to say, the one thing the Jets have done pretty well is when a team's kind of taken it to them and embarrassed them, the Jets have done a real good job at giving it to them the next time. So that could be an exciting game to be a part of if you wanted more incentive to be on the landing strip. But, Mikey, let's get into the From Financial Face-Off.
Right on.
And what did you think of this one? What was your From Financial Face-Off in this
was
one?
a bit of a tough one after a couple games in a row of, some feels like a little lackluster performances from the Jets. Has been this was tough to find a From Financial Face-Off, but I decided to go with the Jets zone entries. It's something that we've talked about, especially early on in the season. And I haven't had a chance to dig too far into the numbers into tonight's game, but kind of going off of the eye test and what I saw, it felt like the Jets really have had a focus on their zone entries tonight. We saw some really nice clean ones, especially from Morrissey and from Ehlers, specifically those two guys. So I wanted to shout that out in a game where, maybe it wasn't the cleanest game. It wasn't the most exciting game. That was something that did stand out for me was the zone entries for the Jets being a positive, not a negative this time.
And I'm going to go a couple different spaces here. I'm going to go on this night, the penalty kill. Obviously something we were just talking the last show, how it felt like there was 3 or 4 games in a row where the top penalty kill unit got hammed. You end up out there on a 2-minute penalty kill, and man, those minutes aren't easy. That's a lot of stress in those minutes while you're outnumbered. Right from the first penalty kill on, I was kind of paying attention to it after our discussion, and 15 seconds into the very first kill, I foul Lowry, get a dump, and they go for a change. So you got to see them roll out a couple different groups. I felt there was one play on McDavid on the half wall where as soon as he bobbled it, Lowry made the jump and Morrissey made the jump to support, and they were able to get possession and send it down. It felt like a unit that was a lot more compact, and the Jets are going to need that, especially on a night where it seemed like Hellebuyck was battling a lot of pucks. The penalty kill did not give up any big opportunities against a group that is pretty skilled and pretty talented. Yep. When you could still send out McDavid, Hyman net front, Bouchard from the point. So I thought the penalty kill tonight for the Winnipeg Jets tilts us in a positive direction for them, especially when comparing it to recently. I'll also say another From Financial detail is just the idea and the fact that the Edmonton Oilers base so much of their offense around Draisaitl and McDavid, and they don't have Draisaitl, who's the leading Hart candidate ahead of Connor Hellebuyck, and then they lose McDavid early. No one wants to hear it, and you can only play the roster in front of you, but that is a pretty big loss in Edmonton. and very big for the Jets to take 2 points in a situation like that.
Yep, absolutely. Huge.
Let's dive into some of the From Financial Farmart chats, starting over on Twitch. Big Papa says, bring Mark Carney to all Edmonton versus Jets games. We were batting 1,000 when he's in attendance. Rye Guy says, I've noticed that their struggles versus the rush mainly occurs when their dump and chase fails. I like this takeaway from Rye Guy because the one thing I do find, and obviously Connor McDavid's a different animal when it gets to skating, but once he got going, that's a tough guy to contain. But I do think that is a factor in the Jets system that when they aren't able to establish that penalty kill, and then that neutral zone gets a little not tight, as we know the Jets game depends on that neutral zone and turning it over and going back the other way.
Yep.
I do think that all stems together. So I really like Rye Guy looking deep into that. When they fail to pin up the opposing team in deep, it becomes a bit of a problem for them. Really like that take from Rye Guy. He's really digging deep for the From Financial face-off. Zooch40 over on Twitch says, Mel Carden picture of Helly. Have you seen this man? And you don't get to ask that question often, but after these last two, it's more than fair. Choices TKs, we'll leave that for after. We'll keep to the From Financial face-off for a bit. Over on YouTube now, formerly says From Financial was the save from Hellebuck on Podkolzin.
Yep.
Which in this game he makes a big save, right? Despite the struggles, that is a big one, like that from formerly. Dante Violet takes a shot at Scott Arniel, saying him being pretty mid with the lineup stubbornness is out of hand and a concern going forward. Now, Rahul, if you want to call in, I'd love to hear from you tonight to see your takeaways. The phone lines are now open. Zooch40 also points out with his take of Helly being on the Mel Carden, has me worried because this is playoffs. Helly from last year. If Helly isn't on, seems like the whole team is just off. And you kind of talked about this last game, Mikey, where you were kind of illustrating Hellebuck's struggles really being the MVP of the team because of how bad it kind of looks in front of him when he's not off. And I don't know if this game was a bad night, more so than a really boring game filled with lots of mistakes from both sides of it. But I think there's definitely justification there. What do you think there?
Yeah, this game I'd chalk more up to being sloppy than anything. But it's 100% the case. When Hellebuck is completely off of his game, the system in front of him also kind of falls apart, he is the most valuable player to his team and most in the league, in my opinion. I still think what he's doing as a goaltender is more impressive than what Draisaitl's doing as a skater.
And here we go. Let's go to those phone lines.
Hi, caller. You're on the landing strip. Hey, caller. Go ahead. You're on the landing strip.
Hey, man. It's Ethan. I'm just calling in to get my From Financial.
Right on. Go ahead.
Let's go, Ethan.
So I have to say, like on the last one, my From Financial is Josh Morrissey, period. But the big thing here was that as soon as Hellebuck let the second shot in, I was like, here we go again.
Mm-hmm. It sure felt like that. Like, that would have been 4 goals on, I think, the last 17 shots. I believe I was talking with Rahul from the chat in the game, and both those you want him to have, especially that wrist shot from the point in the first goal of the game. Definitely wouldn't mind seeing Comrie on Sunday just to get that extra rest.
Awesome, thanks.
Thanks for calling in, Ethan. T. Conapoli says the From Financial faceoff has to be Helly's slow starts and allowing goals on low shot volume to start on regularity. And this was a good example of it. It felt like Ethan just put it felt like, oh boy, here we go again after a bad night the other day. And I see Arc Sign saying we are blessed to have Connor Hellebuck in net. You all got to keep the faith, and I think you're right. But it is also more than fair when the best player has a couple off nights, and we're seeing that stretch right now. So we got to talk about it.
It's hard to not get a little bit afraid, right? When we've seen things happen in the past, we're all a little bit shook, a little bit traumatized from it. But I'm going to side with ArcSign. I'm going to keep the faith. I'm gonna believe that Connor Hellebuck puts this shit back together real quick in time for the playoffs and has a stellar playoff series because God knows we need it.
Ethan says sorry got cut off there. Absolutely no problem. We were kind of wondering what was going on.
Hey, caller, you're on the landing strip.
Here we go again after a bad night the other day.
Oh, we need you to mute your show in the background.
We're blessed to have Connor Hellebuck in it. You all got to keep the faith, and I think you're right, but it is.
We'll give them a second
All
to
right.
mute the background.
Hello?
Yeah, a little announcement.
Hey,
the show's on a
Make
10-second delay.
The
So if you're,
background.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
yep. Can you mute the show in the background?
It's Raul phoning. Yeah, I remember calling a couple weeks ago, and I don't know, I couldn't hear y'all, but seems like I hear you guys today. Yeah, just on the discussion, there's a couple things I wanted to bring up. Just on the Jets season so far, Oilers and Sandberg, but on the Jets season so far, I don't know if people realize how rare it is for teams to put up 110-point seasons like back to back. Like you often see like a bit of a drawback the following year. So I did this very quickly, and this is 11:30 on a Thursday night after a night out for me. But like for example, Carolina has had 3 straight 110-point years, but going back before that, like Toronto has done 110-point years in consecutive years, Tampa, but it's really not very often teams, at least since 2005, which I'm looking at here, just because, you want to keep it in the cap era, but it's not very often teams put up 110 plus point years back to back. So I think that just speaks to the consistency of this team, in particular Hellebuck, right? Like how good he's been the last 2 years. Like if you look at a couple of years ago, Florida had that crazy year with 122 points, and then they had a bit of a drawback, right? Calgary had that one insane year, 111 plus points, and then they kind of drew back. Nashville in 2017, 2018, if y'all remember that, when the Jets and Nashville were like vying for that top spot, 117 points, and then the drawback, right? And then the Jets 17-18, 114 points, and then the following year they regressed back. So putting up 110 points in consecutive years, like that's an amazing job by this team. I thought that's something neat to point out. On Oilers, I don't know what else you could say about him. Like I thought his last game more so than this game. Like last game, you really saw that aggressiveness, right? Like with those cuts in the middle of the offensive zone. Like I really hope the Jets re-sign Oilers and getting that production out of a second line forward. I've brought this up before. You look at his and Velarde's stats. Like in points, they're very similar. But then you consider Velarde's playing 95% of the time with Connor and Scheifele, and Oilers is playing with, Nemestikov and Perfetti. And the fact that they're, neck and neck in points, and then, the time on ice difference. But just looking at the quality of competition, like Oilers put in point per game numbers with his line mates, like unreal. But yeah, like I just saw his and Velarde's stats, and they look similar. But then when you get into the when you contextualize it a little more, one guy's playing with 2, 40 goals. Let's just call them 40 goal scorers, and the other, neither guy's going to break 20, I think. But and then lastly on Sandberg, like what a like I don't know. I know they don't have a most improved player this year. I don't even want to say he's improved because what is like his offense has certainly improved, but defensively he's still, the same as he was previously, but in just such a more critical role for the team, right? Like if you look at his time on ice last couple of years, he was in the 15-minute range, and now he's playing 21 minutes a night. I looked at this over the weekend, like some of the highest percentage of time on ice against like top forwards. I think he's poised to have like a 35 to 40 point year with little power point production or power play time, and that's like all at 5-on-5 essentially. Like that's elite, and
I brought this up to Garrett on Twitter. Like, Josh Manson in 2017 randomly had a 37-point year, but that was like with no power play time. Like, that's kind of what I see Sandberg doing in the near future. And if he does ever get that power play time, like, I think he'll have sort of that Jacob Trouba-esque 2018-2019 year where Trouba got the first unit time and put up 50 points that year. Now, that was right before our contract, and Sandberg is currently not on the power play and about to sign a contract, so that kind of works in our favor. But his game this year, I hope the Jets kind of see that he is the anchor of that second pairing, and that, you know, if they want to improve, if they want to spend the money elsewhere rather than Pionk, that they should have confidence that Sandberg can lock down a pairing. Because at this point, like, at the beginning of the year, I was like, I'm not skeptical, but I'm more of a see it to believe it. So I wanted to just see him in that top four role, and he's just exceeded expectations, I think. And he's played with Shen, he's played with Pionk. Previous years, he's played with Schmidt, and I believe, obviously, Logan Stanley. And surprise, surprise, the only player he's really struggled with is Logan Stanley. So, I think Sandberg, whatever he signs, that contract's going to just pay dividends, just because he's not a high scorer. But the underlying stats, I think, show that there may be more offense there in the near future. I really think he's poised to break out in a big way. But yeah, those are my thoughts for you guys. I'll hang up and continue listening. Thanks.
Hey, thanks Rahul for the call, and I got to shout out Turd Ferguson, who is making me laugh here with Rahul cleaning out the buffet, but good points, and saying I've never seen Nik be this quiet for that long. Kabil's also saying Nik could have gone for a smoke and let the dog out now. Let's dive in though, because Rahul did bring a lot of quality content to this show, and this is what I love about our audience. I know Rahul, we get to talk on Twitter in the DMs all the time, and he's always diving into some stuff. Where do you want to start with what Rahul just brought here?
I got to start with Nik Ehlers. So I've been harping on this for a large chunk of the year, and again, shout out to Garrett Hole for putting this together to make it nice and easy to read. But Nik Ehlers, again, is setting a record in NHL history for having the lowest amount of time on ice per game and being over a point per game. He's doing that
in the last 2 decades.
Since they've been able to track that stat.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's ridiculous. He is doing more with less than anybody else on the team. It's than anybody else in the league in the last 20 years. It's absolutely incredible what Nik Ehlers is doing. And like Rahul said, he's doing it with, two, hopeful 20-goal scorers as opposed to 2 40-goal scorers. We're going to miss Nik Ehlers so goddamn badly when he walks to free agency. It's going to break my heart, and we're going to be struggling to refill those offensive minutes, man.
I want to use this point to get to something Ranis Consort Brian brought up earlier, but we'll get to that as we get through this conversation here. Nik Ehlers, for me, I've made it no secret on this show, and it's not because we have the same name, that I do believe he is the most valuable Jets winger. That being said, obviously Kyle Connor's taken a big step this year, and you could probably make the case for either. But when you look at that, and you look at the minutes, and you make that Velarde comparison that Rahul made about similar production in much less ice time, what Nik Ehlers is able to bring on a second line that's forever been chasing a 2C, that's kind of had the Cole Perfetti development curve towards it, right? We're talking about him taking a step, but it hasn't been like that over the last couple of years. And he's always made that second line be a productive 5-on-5 driving group for his goal differential, right? And it's all from his pure talent level, where if you saw a guy like that playing on a top line with a Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele all year, that's a 90-point player, minimum.
Yep.
Now, he's had some injury issues, and I see Ethan just point that out as well, that could hold him back from that. But if you just look at the production you get out of him in the minutes he plays, and you don't understand yet why. And I heard on another show, Jason Bucola kind of talking about the idea, and I liked a lot of what Jason brought to that show. But this is where, when you don't pay attention to the team every single day, you do miss a little bit. And he was kind of talking about how it seems like he's been stuck at that 60-point threshold. But when you start to look at the minutes, like, he is being more productive in those minutes than any player we've seen in the last 2 decades. I'm hoping they are able to keep him around and happy. We'll see, because that is probably the biggest blow that they could have this summer, is if he were to walk out the door, just from a team that, despite the gaudy goal numbers and the points from the top line, it's not a line that tips the scales as much as a lot of people want to believe when factoring in the minutes and the backside of things. And then, as Brian points out on Twitch, and we'll dive into it a little bit more after, the third line having those scoring troubles, Nik Ehlers really does tip the scales for the Jets at 5-on-5 in a way that I don't think they could replicate in their farm system with anybody that they have. And that's going to be a tough hole to fill coming into next year. Let's dive a little bit into the Dylan Samberg stuff, because a lot of great stuff was raised there, and I know we've been hyping him up. The one thing I'm glad he touched on, and I do think he's right on the idea that if there was a most improved player award, Dylan Samberg probably should be the runaway favorite. He went from a guy last year who his own coaching staff was playing him in less tougher minutes than Logan Stanley. The leverage in those minutes wasn't nearly as tough. And all of a sudden this year, he breaks into a top 4 role. He is playing some of the hardest leverage minutes in the NHL when you look at the quality of competition. He's crushing them defensively. But as we've seen, as this year gets going, he's building up that offensive side, the stretch passes, the jumping in on the rush, the jumping into the slot when there's an opening, the pinching. That's kind of helped the team maintain more offensive zone time, and he's been a big driver for that. He has become one of those two-way defensemen, and I got to say, his contract comes at a great time, because Rahul makes another great point.
Yeah.
I believe the Winnipeg Jets will get Dylan Samberg signed, and I believe we're going to be coming onto this show talking about one of the best value deals Kevin Cheveldayoff has signed, because it's hard for his archetype to really get paid for their value in this cap NHL, where points and time on ice typically drive contracts, right? And it's been my one concern and my one big fear with signing Neil Pionk. Dylan Samberg falls onto the opposite scale of that. So that's going to be exciting whenever that gets done. And I found the Josh Manson thing interesting. Josh Manson's had some great years in the NHL in that archetype, and he did put up nearly 40 points. And hey, if you can get that at Dylan Samberg, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that offense is in there. I absolutely think you can get a consistent, around 40 points out of him if he's allowed to kind of play with the shackles off the way that we've seen the last little bit without Neil Pionk. And yeah, they're going to get him signed long term, and we're going to be so goddamn happy with that contract in like a year. Like literally a year, he's going to be playing on it. We're going to go, yeah, that's great value for what we're getting. He's absolutely emerged into being potentially a second number one on that pairing, like him and Morrissey. That's, you're locked down and you're set going forward. So it's going to be huge if they can get his name, pen to paper without all those counting stats, right? It'll make the deal real friendly for the team, going forward. So yeah, I'm real excited to see the future with Dylan Samberg there.
I want to jump into the 110-point thing, but while we're on the topic of Ehlers and Samberg, I see a point from Ethan. I think there's a good point here, and there's also one I do want to push back on a little bit. Ethan says, I didn't consider Cole's success a product of Ehlers, and I don't see it as much of a product of Ehlers. I think he's helped Cole Perfetti really, especially in the ozone while things were kind of getting going. But I do think Cole Perfetti is a natural two-way hockey player. We were just waiting for the breakout. I think there's something to be said with that draft class missing time with COVID. We're seeing more late breakouts from that group. So I don't necessarily think Nik Ehlers is the cause for Cole Perfetti becoming a better top 6 player. So I think Ethan's right there. But I do want to push back here where he says, but he doesn't make your top line better, because every single time Nik Ehlers has gotten a chance to play on the top line, gotten to play with Mark Scheifele, we have seen Mark Scheifele's game and the top line produce at NHL elite top line levels versus what I would call a mid top line right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of comical every time he gets a little bit of ice time with that top line. They get an offensive chance, like a clear-cut scoring chance. It's hilarious how well they actually do play together and make it better, but it's not in the cards. That's not the role that he's been cast in.
On the topic of back-to-back 110-point years, great digging from Rahul, and there is something real special to be said about pulling that off back-to-back. I make no bones about it. I didn't see this coming. I kind of predicted 97 to 102 was the range I had him in. They're going to crush me on that one. And it does show how consistent this team has been in regular seasons. And one of the things you do look for competitive teams is putting back-to-back quality seasons together, and the Winnipeg Jets have done that completely at this level. Like, there's just no doubting that this team is one of the better teams in the NHL. When you do something like that back-to-back, it is special, and if you win the conference, that's a huge accomplishment in the smallest market. If you win the President's Trophy and get to put up a banner, it's a big accomplishment. So absolutely hats off to the Winnipeg Jets organization pulling this off in a year where I was expecting a step back, not as much as what really surprised me at the beginning of the year, even as someone that expected a step back, was how many of the analysts on a lot of the national programs had them missing the playoffs. I thought that was way too severe when you think about how many points you'd have to drop year over year to do such a thing.
Yep.
But 100% the Winnipeg Jets get a ton of credit for potentially putting up and likely putting up back-to-back 110-point seasons. I do want to laugh at some of the comments that were coming in during Rahul's call. Just as a heads up moving forward, we do have a 10-second delay on this show in case things get crazy or something has to be whatever kind of thing to kind of monitor everything. And I see Rye Guy says, we heard you like top line, so you got to hear it twice. And hey, I'm someone that doesn't mind hearing the sound of my own voice sometimes. I get it. I kind of enjoyed that. It's just something to know about moving forward here. But let's go to Rannis Concert Brian's comment. Just got here, so apologies if you already talked about this. With the power play struggling of late, 5-on-5 is carrying a lot more weight lately. And there's still holes. First and third lines are having some real trouble. And this is where my frustration with not trying different line combos when things have gone stale is kind of been, is because this is what I've seen from that group for most of this year is that first line is so hit and miss, and I think we're on a down stretch outside the Dallas game where they come up big. The offense has disappeared completely for the third line, and without that power play being the big difference, this is the kind of thing that could really hurt you in a playoff series. And it's coming quick. Wouldn't mind seeing some tweaks. I don't think we're going to get it, but I think that's a very valid point from Brian over on Twitch.
Yeah, the 5-on-5 game outside of the second line has been really, really struggling. And when you don't have your otherworldly power play going out and just putting up, record numbers, the cracks start to show through real quick. And again, in a night where you get lucky that they lose both McDavid and Draisaitl, so you're able to find a way to steal both points in overtime. If that's not the case, this game is going to be probably a lot different with those two guys at 5-on-5 all night, right? So we can't be going into the playoffs playing this kind of game 5-on-5. They need to figure it out. They've got to get right. And yeah, as much as we would all like to see some tweaks to the lineup, some experimenting, maybe move a guy up, maybe move a guy down, see what the minutes look like. I don't see it happening. I think these are the guys, they are in these roles, and we just got to hope that they can figure it out now. Cause this seems to be it.
Donnie Fester asks, do we see Lambo as a 2C if Vlad is out for a few games? Not sure if he came back after being taken out. Love the show. So Lambo is being used more as a winger now, which is probably where he's going to end up playing if he were to make the NHL. Yep. I'm going to get a little look at the Moose tomorrow. I'm pretty excited to go see the farm for a little action on Friday night. I think what you would probably see if Vlad had to miss some time is Lowry move up a spot, Barron move up a spot, and then Gus or likely Kupari check in is how I imagine that would go, because the Jets do still have a couple quality NHLers who were parts of the fourth line being successful before this new look as the season's gone on, sitting there waiting for their moment.
Yeah, we've got lots of fourth line guys that they can slide in. So yeah, if that's the case, if somebody gets hurt, if Vlad is out for any stretch, I agree. It's Lowry bumps up a spot, Barron bumps up a spot, and then yeah, Gus or Kupari slides in. Probably Kupari if he's fully healthy. Arniel seems to like him in that spot a little bit better. But if not, then yeah, it'd be Gus. It's going back to earlier on in the in the chat wave, kind of at the beginning, our new chatter B Supreme kind of laid out a quick little thing of like, let me see if I can find it real quick. How far would we have gone if we had a slightly better deadline where the Jets got a second line center other than Vlad? Because yeah, in terms of just health, right? Guy gets hurt and now you don't really have much of a backup for that because you added a depth winger as opposed to having a backup plan up front at center. So it's nerve wracking if you have to lose any of these guys for a long stretch.
I gotta say, I look at this one a little different than you, and I'm glad we get to bring different takes to it because I kind of look at it as the same way I looked at the Pionk thing, where I've made it no secret, and we only got to see 4 games of it, but I really liked Lowry next to Ehlers. So if we got to see a bit of runway with that, for me, I'm more than comfortable in that spot. Honestly, Barron's showing that he's been a good center. You still have Kupari and Gus to fill into those fourth line roles. I don't think the Jets are. I don't think it's as dire. In fact, it might even be a little push, even with that second line going, to see a big Adam Lowry with Nick Ehlers again.
They played real well earlier on in the season together, Ehlers and Lowry, and they even expressed enjoying playing with each other in the post games and everything. So, yeah, that part of it wouldn't be too bad.
Choices TK points out on this conversation, Ehlers creates a double dilemma on that line. Him and Connor are both quick, and teams have to give them room. Ehlers just creates space. Teams respect that speed, and that is an interesting takeaway when you're trying to look at opening up the game for Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele, who he points out top line has to show up more than once every 5 games.
Yep.
But Arniel is as agile, adjusting lines as a train on the tracks. It's just not happening. Correct. And I think we've all come accustomed to that at this point. So we'll see where this goes.
Yep, 100%.
Tico Napoli also on Lambert points out Lambo not getting much done on the Moose this year.
Yeah, the decent start kind of dried up real quick. He's been having a little bit more of a rough second half.
I saw D Labs on Twitch ask the question here with, is this a case of Nick's least favorite phrase, good teams find a way to win? And I do think this game would be apt for it more than how I normally see it used, where I don't think this was a game where Edmonton was much better than Winnipeg. I thought both teams had their struggles in this one. Yep. And the Winnipeg Jets find a way to win this game in a tight game where both teams were making mistakes. So I do think it's an important quality in a game like this where things weren't going well. They weren't necessarily going well for Edmonton at all times too. That you could use that saying and be happy with it on this night. I wouldn't beat this one too much up on that idea.
Yeah, this one for me wasn't a bad game. It was just a sloppy, kind of tepid game by both teams. You know what I mean? So, yeah, totally agree.
I see Gilbert's heading off. He's old and got to crash. Good, go Jets. Nice to see you in the chat tonight, Gilbert. We're going to be crashing here soon, too, as we reach the hour mark. Do you want to dive into the 3 stars on this night and take off ourselves?
Let's hit it.
To the chat, who is your 3 stars on this night? And we're going to dive into ours. Mikey, as usual, the floor is yours.
I'm going to go with the guy that I've early in the season did not give him any love, and lately I've been giving him a little bit extra. So Morgan Barron, again, 3rd star, showing up real nice as a 4th line player and helping them create some offense in real limited minutes, showing some good chemistry with Tanev and Iafallo. I said it a few games ago, and I'll kind of stick by my maybe lukewarm take of I think they're the best 4th line in the NHL. So I'm going to give it to Barron as the representative of that line. 2nd star, give me Josh Morrissey. 28 minutes, I think, overall tonight again. Absolutely ridiculous. Again. Playing nearly half the fucking game over and over again. After some, we didn't really get into it at all, but after some benching for Hayden Fleury, RIP to that run. I think that's probably coming to an end real soon. So Morrissey asked to double shift a lot tonight. So 28 minutes. Give me Josh Morrissey at number 2. And number 1 star, I'm going to miss him so goddamn much. It's Fly. It's Nick Ehlers. I'm going to miss him out there, man. He does more with less. He's absolutely incredible. Another one of his great games after, a bounce back in these last few. So give me Nick Ehlers number 1.
Yeah, we did not touch on the Hayden Fleury benching and Josh Morrissey seeing some extra shifts. And I think that's where the deadline people have a justified reason to be upset outside the 2C conversation is we knew Logan Stanley was a problem. The Jets didn't. Then they ran Hayden Fleury, who wasn't much better beforehand, and he's really struggled after 2 good games out of the gate. And third lefty tends to be the easiest spot in an NHL lineup to upgrade. Fascinated to see where they go to try and fix that problem as the stretch goes on, because at some point, Josh Morrissey playing 28 minutes, you're going to run out of steam. I thought he was excellent in this one. Third star tonight, I wanted to give the fourth line some credit too, and I'm going to go with Brandon Rusty Turbo Tanev getting on the board in his with his first goal since being reacquired. That 5-on-5 shift after a frustrating 5-on-3 is one of those that could turn momentum. Of course, Edmonton ties it late, and it doesn't necessarily have that impact, but that was the type of shift you want to get out of a fourth line, especially after a momentum-type killing power play like that. So I want to give Turbo the love. I'm going to go – you and Ehlers and Morrissey, I'm going to go Kyle Connor. Scores the game winner, but also had 7 shots on goal in this game, and I did feel at 5-on-5, despite the first line struggles. And I thought this was a tough one, especially for Mark Scheifele on handling the puck. I thought Kyle Connor was solid in this one, and it felt fitting to me that he scored the game winner. So I'll go KC on this night. And then number 1 for me, it's got to be J-Mo. Playing all those minutes, really felt like he was, again, the guy kind of starting the charge offensively from the back end. Couple points in this one, creates the space on the game winner. Again, this is 3 games in a row, 27 minutes plus. He is the Winnipeg Jets workhorse. He is their best skater. Let's go Josh Morrissey for the number 1 star.
And shout out to Rye Guy 990. Neil Pionk gets his number 1 star because he shut down McDavid. Shout out to that that playoff series.
Man, I love to see even they really highlighted it. The shift before McDavid got hurt, watching how well Josh Morrissey gaps up on McDavid when he gained all that speed to keep him away from creating some offense when he had built up that speed through the neutral zone. Yeah. I also see apparently Skinner is a bad word in this chat. Our boy Jacer wants to give Jeff Skinner the number 1 star for that knuckle puck. Wants to give Helly the number 3. I don't know if me and Jacer watched the same game in this one, but Twitch does not like the word Skinner, apparently.
Apparently.
Thank you all for being here tonight. We'll be back Sunday with a ticket giveaway. So we want to hear from you on the From Financial Face-Off Sunday. Well, you'll get a chance to go to the Vancouver Canucks versus Winnipeg Jets game at the end of the month. We appreciate y'all being here every night. We love doing this with y'all. You have a great night, and we'll talk to you then.
Right on. You guys know the drill. Tell 2 friends to tell 2 friends. Rate, review, and remember the landing strip for your Winnipeg Jets postgame.